A Tale of Two Brothers. At 26, Sarah found herself in a stable, predictable relationship with David, a man who represented security and comfort after a series of failed connections. Their life together was a smooth, well-planned routine, Friday date nights, lazy Sundays, and a steady integration into each other's lives. Sarah's friends and family approved of David, and she convinced herself that his dependable nature was exactly what she wanted. Yet, beneath the surface of this easy relationship, a quiet restlessness began to grow. Sarah felt she was living in a perfectly organized calendar, longing for spontaneity that David's careful planning could never provide. This feeling came to a head when she met Marcus, David's older, more spontaneous brother. At David's parents' anniversary party, Marcus was everything David was not: effortlessly charming, slightly rumpled, and full of a bold curiosity about life. Their initial conversation was a revelation for Sarah, a connection that went beyond small talk and touched on deeper aspirations and feelings. She found herself drawn to Marcus's unpredictability and the way he saw her as an individual, not just David's girlfriend. The attraction, once sparked, grew in secret. Marcus began texting Sarah, and they found excuses to have one-on-one conversations at family gatherings, where David was often preoccupied with being the responsible son. These stolen moments highlighted the differences between the brothers. David talked about 5-year plans and security. Marcus spoke of passion and risk. The contrast became impossible to ignore, and Sarah began to compare the two. Finding David's predictability increasingly dull, the first real line was crossed when they met for drinks without David, who had to cancel last minute. In this setting, the conversation became more intimate, with Sarah confessing her fears of a life too carefully planned, and Marcus validating her feelings by suggesting that good and right for you aren't always the same thing. The emotional boundary was shattered, setting the stage for their eventual affair. The physical affair began on a rainy Thursday afternoon while David was out of town for work. Marcus arrived at her apartment, and the undeniable tension between them culminated in a passionate encounter. Over the next 4 months, they lived a double life, meeting in secret and communicating through intimate texts. Sarah found herself compartmentalizing, living a lie with David while building a passionate, secret relationship with his brother. She convinced herself that what she had with Marcus was a deeper, more genuine connection, and the deception became a form of self-preservation. The affair unraveled when David, stressed and distracted, discovered an explicit text from Marcus on Sarah's phone. His quiet composure gave way to a cold, devastating betrayal. He didn't scream or rage. He simply told Sarah to get out, packing her things with a mechanical efficiency that was more painful than any outburst. In a single hour, Sarah's life with David was over. In the wake of her eviction, Sarah turned to Marcus, believing they could finally be together. But Marcus's reaction was distant and hesitant. The affair, thrilling in secret, couldn't withstand the reality of public exposure and the irreversible damage it caused. Marcus, faced with losing his brother and his family, couldn't commit to a relationship that had destroyed their trust. The affair, built on the thrill of secrecy, was not strong enough to survive in the open. Sarah lost everything: David's love, Marcus's commitment, and her place in the family she had been so eager to join. The affair, meant to bring her to a more authentic life, left her completely alone. Both David and Marcus cut her off, and the brothers' relationship was seemingly destroyed, leaving Sarah to confront the ruins of her choices and the painful reality that what she had with Marcus was never meant to last beyond the shadows. Part 2. The Aftermath. The first few weeks after David threw me out were a blur of cheap coffee and self-pity. My new apartment, a cramped one-bedroom filled with borrowed furniture and my life in garbage bags, felt less like a home and more like a punishment. I spent my days staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the last 4 months. The stolen glances, the hushed phone calls, the rush of adrenaline every time Marcus and I managed to pull off another secret meeting. I saw myself as a victim of circumstance, caught between two men and a love that was too complicated for a normal life. I was still clinging to the narrative that Marcus and I had fallen in love, and David was simply too rigid to understand. But as the days bled into weeks, the silence became deafening. Marcus didn't return my calls. His texts went unanswered, and my emails were met with the digital equivalent of a locked door. He had chosen his family, his place in that complex web I had so naively believed I could join. The betrayal I felt from him was a mirror of the one David must have felt from me, only magnified. Marcus had lost a brother because of our selfishness, a bond he had valued more than me, and the guilt of that realization started to gnaw at me. I wasn't just the woman who had hurt David. I was the catalyst for the destruction of an entire family. One afternoon, I ran into David's mom, Linda, at the grocery store. My first instinct was to turn and flee, to hide among the aisles of canned goods and pretend I didn't exist. But it was too late. She saw me. The expression on her face was a cocktail of grief and rage, a look so potent it made my knees weak. "Sarah," she said, her voice a low, pained whisper. I never thought you would do this to my son." I had no words. My apology, rehearsed in my head 1,000 times, felt hollow and meaningless in the face of her pain. She wasn't an accessory to the story. She was a mother whose 2 sons were no longer speaking, whose family was shattered by my choices. "He won't even talk to Marcus," she continued, tears welling in her eyes. "They've been inseparable their whole lives. And now it's like half our family is gone. David doesn't come to family dinners. Marcus avoids all of us. And it's all because of you." She didn't scream or make a scene. She simply spoke the truth of her sorrow. And it hit me with the force of a physical blow. The convenient narrative I had built for myself that this was a personal problem between 3 people crumbled into dust. The ripple effect was real, extending far beyond us and causing immeasurable pain to innocent people. When she finally walked away, leaving me standing in the middle of the aisle, I realized I hadn't even had the grace to offer a proper apology. I was still so consumed with my own misery that I couldn't see hers. In that moment, the self-pity I had been bathing in finally broke. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about them. That night, I made a decision. I had to stop running. I had to face the wreckage I had created. I owed them both an apology, not for my own absolution, but for their peace of mind. I started with Marcus. He was the one who had disappeared so completely, the one I had the most unanswered questions for. His voice, when he finally answered my call, was a shock. It was cold, devoid of the teasing charm I remembered. "I didn't think you'd call me back," I said, my voice shaking. "I wasn't going to," he replied. "I was a coward. I'm sorry, Sarah, for all of it." His apology wasn't what I had expected. It was for his own actions, for ghosting me, not for the affair itself. "I don't want to be with you anymore, Sarah," he said, his voice softer now, but firm. The thrill was in the secret. When it was all out in the open, I realized it wasn't enough. It wasn't worth losing my brother. I never truly planned for the future. Not with you. Not with anyone. I just enjoyed the moment. I was just as selfish as you were. His words, brutal and honest, were a cold splash of reality. He hadn't been in love with me. He had been in love with the idea of the forbidden, the moment we were no longer a secret. The passion died. The emotional connection I had convinced myself was so deep was really just a performance, a thrilling drama we both acted out. We talked for an hour, our final conversation not a desperate plea for a future, but a painful, necessary postmortem. He admitted his part in the disaster, acknowledging that he had used me to feel alive and had never truly considered the consequences. I, in turn, admitted my own selfish desires, my longing for an adventure that I had never been brave enough to seek on my own. When we finally hung up, there was no more lingering hope. There was just a shared understanding of the mess we had made. The next day, I drove to David's old apartment. My heart hammered in my chest, a drumbeat of fear and shame. I didn't have a plan beyond showing up. I didn't know what I would say or if he would even open the door. I rang the doorbell, and after a long silence, he answered. He was wearing an old t-shirt and sweats, the same kind of comfortable clothes he'd always worn around the house. His face was paler, his eyes more tired, but his gaze was as direct as ever. "What do you want, Sarah?" he asked, his voice flat and empty. I just wanted to say I'm sorry," I said, the words catching in my throat. I was so wrong. I was selfish and I was careless. And I took your trust for granted. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too stupid to see it. I never wanted to hurt you like this. I'm not asking for your forgiveness or for a second chance. I just needed you to know that I am truly, truly sorry." He looked at me, a long, quiet stare. His face remained a mask. But for a brief second, I thought I saw something in his eyes, not rage, but a flicker of the pain that had been consuming him. He didn't say a word. He just nodded, slowly, almost imperceptibly, and then closed the door. He didn't forgive me. He didn't scream or throw insults. He simply acknowledged my apology and closed the door on the life we had shared. And in that moment, I realized that his silence, his finality, was the only peace he could offer. I stood there for a long time, looking at the door that had once been a gateway to my future. Now, it was just a door, a solid barrier between my past and whatever came next. I had no home, no partner, no grand passion. I had simply paid the price for my choices. Driving away from his apartment, my car felt heavier, but my spirit felt lighter. I was still alone, still dealing with the mess I'd made. But for the first time in months, I was no longer running. The lies were gone. The secrets were gone. I had faced the consequences. And while the road ahead was long and uncertain, I knew I was finally on a path to building a life of my own, not one borrowed from another person, but one built on a foundation of honesty and accountability. The painful lesson had been learned, and I was finally ready to face myself,